I will do this in 10 minutes, and then I will leave 5 minutes of question of answer, because I like a lively discussion and a confrontation with people who disagree with me. All right, so what do I mean first by runtime performance versus maintainability? So the runtime performance is how long it takes for a program to execute from the beginning to the end of the execution, and the maintainability is how easy is that to read that code in which the program is written, or update the program code. So this is not a new trade-off, because this is something which you can choose between various programming languages since a long time, but in the DevOps world, this is something, I would say, which we usually don't think about when we choose our tools. Welcome. All right, so I'm going to start with some examples so you get to know what I'm talking about. This is my first example. Yes, it pains a little bit to the eyes. So I think we have recognized assembler code. So this is actually the source code from the first version of Unix 71 of the cat command. So for me, it's difficult to understand something here, apart that we are moving registers. So yeah, 1971. So in 1973, so the cat command was rewritten like this. So I'm not really myself a developer, I'm rather a DevOps, but already from this I can recognize some concept. I have this argc, argument count, and argv, okay, I remember in Python the number of arguments. I see a loop, so probably we are looping between different arguments. So why did the Unix people did that? It's because in the beginning of the 70s, everybody wanted to code as close as possible to the machine, and it's actually a very novel approach to use what was considered at that time a high-level language, because they found out actually writing all the Unix userland in assembler code was very tedious. So I'm going now to the topic of the presentation, so Makefiles and Ansible, but I wanted to start with this opposition of runtime performance and maintainability, which I say is not a new thing. So I love Makefiles, and actually this very slide deck was generated with this Makefile. So nothing very complicated about that. I have my source, I have my target. I put that in the directory where I have all my source code for the slide deck in Markdown. And what I like is I just can go in that directory. I type make d and tab. It expands automatically in the shell to make deck, and I don't have to remember this long syntax. There is some kind, actually, of redundancy, as you see. For instance, deck.html is written on the top left, is written on the right. Also, deck markdown, the input is written on the first line and the second line. So, yeah, you can use make variables to shorten that. So if you've been working with Makefile, I don't think I'm going to teach you anything. And now I'm going to move to a more longer Makefile I was using is one of my projects. So this is a snippet for a Makefile which was used to build a virtual machine image for Vagrant, which is a DevOps tool. So we were building a virtual machine image for Debian for Vagrant. So we were putting a lot of files together, and we were converting to one disk image format to another disk image format, adding some metadata, unpacking that. So yeah, a build tool. So this build tool was run we run it around once a month. When there was some kind of minor Debian release, we'll rebuild it again, and this stuff here was run in a GitLab pipeline. Now the problem I had is that I needed to edit this code around twice a month, and each time I had to look at this, I had to first start to wonder myself, what is actually the $$ parameter doing it? And what is that % doing it? And what is that % with a colon with %.box and that % with only a colon? And actually, I didn't like to go to this code, and I tried to replace, for instance, these variables you see on the last line with the $* with $ less than that, and I thought, yeah, maybe there's a human name from that, so the next time I have a look at this, then this thing is, for me, easier. But actually, there is not this default built-in make variables. You have to use like this. You have to use the $, you have to look the $ lesser than that, and it's just like this. If you don't shell programming, it's probably you know this one. So for my next project, which was also, so these are all weekend projects, or a little bit during the week, but yes, all side of project. So my next project, which was about, again, building disk image for a Unix kind of operating system, I decided to try a different approach. I decided to try to do that with Ansible. So it's a wall of code. I'm sorry, as I say you in presentation, you should not put wall of code. This is why I'm giving you 10 seconds. So the first thing for me which jumps to my mind here when I read that is that, yes, it's verbose, but it's extremely clear what this thing is doing on. And in the end, I had using the build tool Ansible, I have really a code which I could much more easily and comfortably work on it. So again, this is a code which is running like, for instance, a new version of this free-mint operating system comes, I don't know, once a quarter. I run this, so this is not something which is in a very tight loop. And this is something we have to consider, and this is the main point of my talk, is that if the program is not running that often, I mean, it does not make sense to use a programming tool which is actually optimized for performance. So Ansible is slow. This is definitely slower than the Makefile, but the developer win is much higher compared to what I lose in performance. So I think actually this is a bit of a trend we might have in the future, because, you know, I didn't put AI in the title of this talk, but there will be AI somewhere. So I think in the future we will have a more programming language and tools which are boring to write, maybe difficult to compile, and easy to read. So, and I think Ansible is exactly an example of this tool. Why? Because for writing this verbose source code for our tools, we can always use some kind of chatbot generator, which will generate something that we will have to review and understand afterwards. And it's much more easier to review the output of an Ansible Playbooks than to return the inference rule of a Makefiles, to my point of view. I'm going to use to give you an example of what I mean with boring to write, difficult to compile, and easy to read. So, on the top line here we have standard regular expressions, which is there to match maybe we have some very good folks in the regular expression in the room. So this is to match a semantic version number. You know, like you have x dot y dot z, and so you have 3 decimals, one after the other. The last one is maybe not a decimal, and you match that in a pattern group. So I can understand the part until the minor, but then after I have to say I'm done. Huh? Now there is also an example of maybe what we would see more in the future is this magic regex library, which exists for multiple programming language. So here this is in JavaScript, but it exists in Rust and other programming language. And for me, this is a canonical example from something which is difficult to write, but it's easier to read. Because if you need to write this code, I mean, you would never remember that you have to use this maybe or this one or more or this grouped as parameter. But when you have it before the eyes, you understand what it's doing in. So this is the job of the computer to generate that, but this is our job to understand. So, so yeah, we're coming to the closely to the end. So I'm going to give. I was saying so a lot of good things about Ansible, which for me a tool which is difficult, easy to read, but difficult to write. But when I'm talking about Ansible Playbooks, I'm not asking you to do things like this. So I think here we have someone which was trying to do functional programming with Jinja templates. If you concentrate very much, actually, you see maybe it's not that complicated because you know we have probably some lists that we want to apply a map operation and then flatten and intersect. So if you have been working maybe with the Java Streams API, this sounds familiar. But don't do that. If you need to do something which is the built-in Ansible modules are not good enough, please write a small Python module and yourself in 6 months will thank you. That was it. Thank you. Do you have any questions, rants, comments, flames? So the question is about, so if we start to use tools which are writing to if we are using tools which are making us like so chatbot generated code which is making us lazy, is that not, are we not losing if somebody prefers to write a regex code? So if you are confident in your team that, my answer would be, if you're confident in your team that the regex code that you write now, you will be able to debug it in 12 months and everybody in your team is good with that, go ahead. Yeah, I would not do it, but I mean, I'm already 50, so I don't have the brain cells for that.
What's your take on playbooks versus Makefiles in terms of for Makefiles, you can have like a dependency, so like you have prerequisite targets,
Mm-hmm.
yeah? And how do you replicate this in playbooks? Because like I also use Makefiles and playbooks, and Makefiles I find more useful because of this dependency, and Make does not rebuild something that has to rebuild.
Yes.
But I hear that playbooks you have to always rebuild, and it's not only
Yeah, so, I mean, if each, I understand what, yeah. So the question is that, so Makefiles have built-in dependency check. So if a requirement is already satisfied, then it will not do this step again, but we don't have such a mechanism in Ansible, so it will always be slow. So this is a good point. I would say first, for instance, if you're using Makefile as a part of a tight loop, for instance, you're writing code, you build, you test, then of course Ansible is not the good thing, because the example I was doing here, it was for things which were run 1 month. So what you say is true, because for instance, if you write your Ansible manifest to be idempotent, so you can make that each step will not be executed, but still the parsing of all of this is still going to be slow because it's going to be step by step. I don't have an answer for that one. It's indeed for this aspect, Makefiles are better, but for the readability, for this use case, I still prefer the Ansible one.